to Books and Brews Light, number 16. Our guest today is DeDee Cai. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you got it.
Perfect. What is the background of the name? What country is
So
it?
I take after my husband's last name, and
Okay.
he is Chinese.
Chinese. Okay, because I know you are a first generation immigrant. And
Yes.
so what country did your parents come from?
We migrated from Vietnam. So
Vietnam. Okay. Okay. Can you introduce yourself to our guests and tell them about your book?
yes, absolutely. So I'm DeDee Cai. I am the founder and performance coach for a company called Fits to Profit. And this whole experience for me to be where I am today in front of you has been a personal journey. And with that, during the pandemic, I also opted into channeling my positivity into something bigger than myself in writing and publishing my own book. It's called The Overcomer: How to Use Fear as a Catalyst for Success. And that is on Amazon right now as well. And the intention with that is just to share my whole personal story, at the same time other entrepreneurs' experiences as well, and triumph and errors and trials in my stories, hopefully to inspire people to find their calling and turn it into a business idea and follow through.
Wonderful. And I think your book, I mean, let's face it, there are a lot of books about succeeding in business, succeeding in life, but I think yours takes a unique angle that you start from this idea of fear. And so how did this occur to you to start from fear?
Oh my gosh, because honestly, my story has been from just being first generation immigrant and doing the exact and follow the exact plan that my parents had for me, et cetera, and things like that, just to, of course, develop success for myself and also building the American dream. And it was just my conditioning, et cetera, and things like that, until I really start working on myself, having only lasted in corporate for 6 months and then starting my brick and mortar and got completely burnt out. When I really rerouted my whole journey into really taking care of myself, et cetera, and things like that. And what I realized was, when I didn't really speak up for myself, when I realized that something didn't seem right, when I was following someone else's path or plan for me, and or even going into corporate and then going into brick and mortar, it just didn't feel right. And I never spoke up. I just basically lost myself in the process because I was afraid, to speak up for myself, because I was afraid of, not, I guess, not pleasing my parents, and or I was really afraid to fail, if anything, because it was more of that. And what was really interesting is, of course, during the pandemic, we all were in fear of
everybody. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people, though, were living in a lot of fear.
Of us, right? Most of us was in fear of the unknown, of the uncertainty, etc. And what was really crazy and interesting was, I found myself right before the lockdown, going to the grocery store and having the urge to buy everything. Like, to buy everything that I put my hands on, and I'm usually pretty intentional and really mindful with what I need to get. But I felt like I wanted to grab everything, when I was like, wait, no, you don't need everything. And in reflection, this is also when I was running my podcast too. And what I realized, I was so anxious and fearful. And I had to really sit back and identify to see what I was afraid of. And ultimately, long story short, for me, I realized that I was just really afraid of the unknown, and honestly afraid of dying. Like, afraid of
I was kind of laughing because I believe, was it 6 or 7 of my kids were at home. My son got sent home from college. My 3 youngest all got sent home from high school and junior high. And so my great fear at the time was not having enough toilet paper.
Yes.
And it really is kind of scary when you've got that many people. And a kind of crude line from a movie comes to mind: those kids never stop crapping. But it's a funny movie, actually, blended. But every time, a few of my boys worked at grocery stores, Walmart, things like that. And every time I went to get a pack of toilet paper, they were out. But because my boys work there, I just said, bring a pack home every time they come in, or call me and I'll come and get it while they're still in stock. But that was my fear. But go on with what you were saying.
Yes, and I realized, wow, I am so afraid. I'm like I'm living in fear right now.
Mhm.
And it's just got me really reflecting on, wait, I've been afraid many times, multiple times over. And there was time where I was afraid of starting my business because I was afraid of failure. There was times that I was afraid of doing certain things, but wait, I did it all and then come through the other side. So I
Right.
said, actually, fear is good for you, because at that moment too, it made me realize to reflect on, what is it that I was afraid of? And I was just afraid of death. But it was interesting. I had to come to terms with that because, you know, everyone, we all have to die.
Right.
No
Yep.
matter of how and when. But it was when I realized, like, it's nothing to be shy away from.
Right.
And I need to channel my energy positively. Like, what can I choose to do? Or do I sit there and wait to go to the groceries all day and every day and or be afraid of what's going to happen to me and my family? No, I'm not going to do that. And so right around the same time was the idea of, what if I talk about fear from a standpoint of it being something motivational and something that we can use as a catalyst, for to move forward or to reflect. And that's how it came about. And
Right.
also my
And
grandfather.
I think the fear of death can be a great motivator, because if we look at it right, we go, as you said, we're all going to die. So the real question is, how do I best use my life while I still have it? And that
Exactly.
reframes everything.
100%. And also too, Laura, what's interesting is I lost my best friend to suicide the week of my wedding. And honestly, that was also the moment where I realized that that was my calling, to start a coaching business with the purpose of really helping others see their own value. She didn't see value in herself. That's why she was depressed and she was anxious. And, she chose that route. And it was a matter of life and death. And so I choose to live because that also reminded me I was suffering from silence as well, from depression, anxiety. And so that was that. And I said, well, I chose to live. And now that means now we're going through the season of our life, and I can choose to be here. And what I can do with my time here is so super valuable, especially I didn't know we were going to come out of it or not. And so
Right.
that was, like you said, it was like, okay, this is my opportunity here to channel, all of my thoughts, energy, and resource into writing this book, to leave it behind if anything were to happen to me, and if we, if we don't come out of the pandemic and whatnot.
Right.
So
Right.
it was definitely all of that came to the reason why I wrote the book, and and why fear is the topic of
So what do you drink for a book about success? Do you have a drink today?
well, I'm drinking tea. I usually love my
Okay.
teas.
I was going to ask what kind of a restaurant you were running and
Yeah.
choose my drink on that, but I didn't have time to do that. So I looked up, what do the world's most successful people drink? And
Oh,
it was actually quite interesting. It was everything from water and orange juice to Diet Coke every morning to hard alcohol. And so I kind of compromised. This is sparkling, what is it? Sparkling non-alcoholic red grape. So
oh,
it's both a fruit drink and it's non-alcoholic. And rather famously, I believe it's Donald Trump, I just learned recently, does not drink any alcohol at all, ever. So I would be interested to know how common that is among the very successful. I haven't heard of any other very successful person saying that. So I don't know. But cheers.
Yep. I have my herbal tea, lemon ginger.
Excellent. Do you have a reading ready for us?
So this is literally just a couple pages on my chapter 9. I'm just going to read a couple pages, but it's about setting big goals. So I love this quote, and the chapter starts with, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." This is by Lao Shu. "If your dream isn't big enough, it's not worth it. However, once you set a goal, how do you go from about making it to just making it happen. I have a process I use when executing any project or goal in my business. By doing so, I can ensure results. And here's what I do before I share the process. Let's start with a simple math question. Five birds are sitting on a tree branch. 4 of them decide to fly off the tree. How many birds are left?
I'm guessing the answer isn't 1 because that's too obvious.
Did you answer 1 or 5? Well, the right answer is 5. This is because there's a difference between deciding and actually taking action. Have you ever experienced indecision in your life before? We tend to have many desires as we decide to eat healthier, learn a skill, or start a new business. However, all of these ideas don't really mean anything until we make a decision to take any practical action towards our goals. As small business owners, we have to at least have 2 things in common. Not only we have many big ideas, but we also have the ability to see big picture and envision what our success will look like in the future. In my experience, we are not as keen on coming up with a plan and, more importantly, sticking to the plan. We tend to get excited about an idea, but it is mostly short-lived. Taking action is a practice that always begins with making a decision. By getting into a habit of putting ideas and decision into action, we are in a better position to achieve the result we desire. So last but not least, I share a couple lines of my favorite leader of all times. He said, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and then your values become your destiny. This was written by Gandhi. So essentially, to really achieve big goals, to sum it up, is to be able to take action and stay in action and follow through. Because any goal is worth achieving, according to my in the book.
Except taking over the world and being a homicidal maniac. Those are not goals worth achieving. I'm a little biased, of course. So interestingly, you put the book into 3 parts, and I'm not sure I've heard of this kind of book being formatted that way. What was your reason for doing that? What are those 3 sections?
So the 3 sections is the one part is basically how we got here. Part 2 is the principles of how you can conquer your fear and become an overcomer. And the part 3 is how you can actually become an overcomer. So what it is basically, how did we even end up here? Like, why was fear not talked about, or how did we learn fear, etc., and things like that. So I want to give the readers a ground information on fear and just my theories, and also some research around what fear, how we were taught. I believe fear is taught, right? And then the second piece is, I really believe that for someone to overcome fear, that person is ultimately the overcomer, which is the title of the book.
Right.
And the second part is just really spelling out the principle of the characteristics of an overcomer. And then part 3 is more practical ways and steps of how you can actually become the overcomer, who is, conquering fear, using that to achieve your goals.
So as you were talking, I was kind of thinking, to me, it's probably a bit of both. I think some families are good at teaching kids, step out and do what you want to do. Don't be afraid. Some families have really taught their children to be afraid of speaking up, to be afraid of anything and everything and all the ways they could fail. I think there's also, and I'm curious about your opinion, I think there's also a bit of nature, that some people are just born with a bolder spirit and born with a mind that says, wait, why am I being afraid?
Oh, absolutely. I think biologically, we were born, right? Like to have that part of the brain, right? Cognitively, to make sure that we're staying out of danger, for sure. 100%. Biologically, yes, absolutely. And what I'm talking about, the fear of today's society is definitely more learned. Right. So for example, it could be, I know I'm a parent, so I catch myself oftentimes by, when my kid is climbing and I'm saying, be careful, you're going to fall. I'm like, wait, no, do I know that he is going to fall? So we basically shifted from saying, be careful, to be mindful. I know what you're doing. Just watch your feet. or things like that. So it's definitely, I'm speaking from the standpoint of my own experience of how I was taught fear, right? I was taught like, you don't climb, you're going to fall, or don't do that, this is going to happen. But what's
Right.
interesting, as I became more, I guess my background is cognitive psychology, learning more about the brain and things like that.
Mhm.
We do have that part of the brain where it keeps us safe, and we are wired to be afraid, when we need to be afraid. But oftentimes during today's society, we don't have to be afraid. And
Yep.
and being able to basically have the right mindset to talk ourselves out of it. For example, I overcome fear of public speaking, to be speaking in front of you today, because that was also fear. And then it was irrational fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, fear of, English is my second language, all of the things, when all of those were also just trained from my experience. So I had to work through all of that. So what I'm talking about more so is the fear that is learned in today's society, which can be, I know for me, I'm breaking the generational, fear of teaching or fear of parenting, for sure. But absolutely, there is a nature part to it. We are biologically wired, to be afraid, to be safe, right? Back in the day, during the hunting and gathering times, we had to be able to like run away from predators. So we are still that, but it's like we're living in a different kind of society now.
Right. It's just always been an interesting question to me that you can look at any family with more than one child, and those kids, they're raised the same, but they can be complete opposite in personality. One can be very fearful and never get out of that, while the other just seems to be born to say, no, I'm not going to be afraid.
Exactly.
And it's an interesting thing to me. So what kind of restaurant was it that you ran?
So my mom was the head chef. I was in partnership with my mother. It was a Vietnamese restaurant, so authentic Vietnamese.
Okay. And how long did that last?
5 years. We were doing that for 5 years, and we built the restaurant from scratch. It was the most amazing and grueling experience I've ever had, but I have learned so much from it, and I'm grateful for it until this day.
I'm going to assume that people were pretty disappointed when it closed.
Yes, definitely. We were that hole in the wall that everyone knew in the community. I knew every single person that walks through that door by their name. I know their family. I know the extended family from afar. I could hear the voice and know exactly what they're placing an order for. Like, it was a great way. I think it was my first taste of building communities, and it was great, just as much as it was a lot of work, obviously.
Right. Yeah, my cousin, when her parents eventually came from Vietnam too, because she came when she was 14, and my aunt and uncle adopted her. And then eventually her parents came. I don't know if it was strictly a legal adoption, since her parents, they expected to come, but they always brought Vietnamese food to our Christmas and Thanksgiving. And I know I would be disappointed to lose a good Vietnamese restaurant. It was such good food, and her mother was a very good cook. So, what are the 2 or 3 top things that you would say make somebody an overcomer or successful?
Yeah. I would say that the first and foremost, and perhaps this is probably a very common topic, but I want to speak about resilience from a more personal standpoint.
Okay.
Resilience from a place of self-love, like coming into it with compassion, grace, and staying with the process and keeping faith is what I want to speak about. Not from the outside, right? We talk about how, we need to hustle, we need to keep at it, we need to grind. Oftentimes, like my experience, grinding away or doing other things that is not in alignment with who you are is not the way to go. So keep up the resilience, but really staying in alignment with who you are as a person in the process, no matter what you're working towards, is number one thing. And then secondly, just embracing I really truly believe up until this day, every obstacle is an opportunity. So if you can be resilient and staying grounded in your values, and also embracing all of the obstacles and always finding the silver lining, is how you can find success in life and business.
That's fantastic. Do you think that you will be writing another book?
I think so. I'm not quite sure which topic or what I'm going to be writing about. But I feel like, yes, there's definitely a second book.
That's great. Will it also be nonfiction, or are you thinking of
It
branching into
definitely,
fiction?
yes.
Oh,
Yeah, it definitely will be nonfiction. I grew up loving hearing stories from my grandfather, and I love nonfiction. I just love real life experiences. I love movies that's based on, true stories and things like that. So it definitely will be a nonfiction book.
that's great. I will look forward to hearing about that. In the meantime, where can people find you online?
You can find us anywhere. I'm also on the platforms of Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course, Facebook. You can also find us on our website as well, which is www.fittoprofit.com, all spelled out. So FITTOPROFIT.com. And you can find the Overcomer also on Amazon. And I'm just a message away if you want to talk about fear and how to overcome
Right.
it.
And you run a coaching business, just so our listeners are clear that,
Yes.
and the book and the coaching business, do they kind of dovetail together?
Yes, absolutely. My
Okay.
clients definitely are learning concepts that are presented in the book, and vice versa. Yes.
Great. Fantastic. You can find me at booksandbrews.net, at lauravosica.com, at our sponsor is gabrielshornpress.com. And I am on all the social medias. I'm not going to list them all because I have way too many, but I'm pretty easy to find. There aren't that many Laura Vosicas. There's one other. And I don't think anyone would mix us up. So I did want to announce that Cooking with Rabbits is now out, and that means cooking rabbit meat. It does not mean cooking with your pet bunny and an apron and a chef's hat, no matter how much fun that might be. So that is brand new, and the Gabriel's Horn Poetry Anthology is now in the works. We are busy formatting that, and that will be out soon too. So thank you very much for being on the program. Cheers.
Yes. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.